Sari. I'm going to tell you a story today, a creepy story from my own life that I have jotted down here. My son asked me to tell you the story about the Mickey Mouse Man. Um, it's true crime. Nothing happened to us. However, there's a backstory to this. So my son's 40. At the time, he was about, I don't remember, somewhere between 2.5 to maybe 4, because he started school at 5 at kindergarten, and he was a preschooler. And the reason I say that I'm not sure about the age is because I just scoured the entire internet looking for the story and cannot find it anywhere. I even took out a subscription to the local newspaper in hopes of trying to find the entire backstory and investigate it. I'll continue to look for it. But in any case, it is really a creepy story. So at the time, I was a bartender and a waitress at night. I had a day job, and I worked at night as well. And I would pick up my son from the babysitter, usually somewhere about 10:30 to 11. Worked 4 to 6 hours at night. And sometimes if I was waiting tables, it might be 2. But anyway, this particular night, it was pretty late. It was 12 something. And there was a guy in our neighborhood who was hassling kids at the local schools. We had about 6 elementary schools in our neighborhood, and they were the big brick brownstones, 2-story brownstones. They had a black top, and then adjacent to the black top they had big, beautiful, established old parks. And in the parks they would have a big pavilion building that had concrete picnic tables and benches, things like that, and bathrooms. And apparently this guy was lurking and hanging around in those pavilions during the daytime. And there were water fountains there as well. So all the kids were instructed to not use the bathrooms or anything like that. They could go in the pavilions. In any case, my son's cousin actually had her leg cut. The guy tried to grab her and ended up cutting her leg. So that's how I knew about it, because he wasn't in school yet, and I only have one son. So in any case, we all knew this whole story about this guy, and he was wearing a Mickey Mouse mask. They didn't know who he was. It ended up later that the story came out that he had lost custody of his son. He was in a custody battle, and he had spiraled out of control before that. And he ended up killing his son and his wife in a fire. But right before all that happened, he was doing this nonsense. And so people had spotted him. So the word out was that this guy was, just kind of a general description, but that he wore a Mickey Mouse mask. So I was really hyper vigilant about it anyway. So I'm coming home from work. It's dark. The neighborhood is not well lit. It's a suburb, older homes, bungalows. Big established trees along both sides of the street. My street ended at a T, so at the end of my street, houses on both sides, but it just dead-ended along another street that looked like a T, if you were to look at it in an aerial view. And right in front of where I'd have to park, there was a huge old tree, huge trunk, and a big wooden telephone pole, and a stop sign. So there was like 4 to 5 feet of visual, you couldn't see anything right there. And the tree was so well established in the branches and leaves that it would completely block out the light, the street light that was at the top of that telephone pole. So basically you couldn't see anything at night right there. So I'm coming down the street, and I see what I think is the guy with the Mickey Mouse mask. I'm like, is that a Mickey Mouse mask? So I thought, let me circle around one more time and just, take a peek. So I do, I circle around, and sure enough, he's got a Mickey Mouse mask on. It's the guy. So I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? This is pre-cell phone, anything like that. So I said, I'll circle one more time. He's heading up that T street, up that street there. So by the time I circle around the neighborhood and come back down, I'll be able to pull in front of my house, but, and he'll be gone. Now, I couldn't go in my front door because I had another incident where I had to leave my deadbolt locked, and if I didn't have the key, if it was locked from the interior with the little knob, the turn knob. You had to have the key and some other kind of, anyway, I'll tell you about that story. That's a whole nother creepy story why that was left like that. So I would park right at the corner, and generally if it was locked from the interior, I'd have to walk 70 feet down the side of my house to go through the back door in that way. All right, so we pull up in front. Oh, I'm at the top of the street, and my radiator hose breaks. And there is steam billowing, just billowing out of the top of my car, out of the hood. I can barely see. The car dies, and I thought I'll just worry about that tomorrow. I'm just going to just coast right in front of the house. So I do. I coast, and it's dead. And I'm getting my son out of the back seat. Now, he always carried this enormous basket full of his Masters of the Universe castle, along with us He-Man and Skeletor, and I don't know, 20 of those figurines, this laundry basket. So he's getting that, and I'm like, come on, let's go. So we're getting out of the car, and I shut my door, and I turn around forward, and who steps out from behind that cluster of the tree and all that other stuff? The Mickey Mouse man with the mask on, and he's looking right at me, and I'm petrified. Now I know I'm going to have to go past him to get to my back door. So I tell my son, I'm like, come on, let's come with me, come with me. Where are we going? You know, he's disoriented. He's thinking we're going home. I'm like, just come with me. So he's walking along. I got him by the wrist, dragging him along across the street, petrified. So I don't even know the lady that lives across the street. I just knew that she had a tan TR7. It's way back in the day. So I'm just saying a random name. I called her Karen. I'm pounding on her door. Karen, Karen, it's us, it's us. So I can see out of my peripheral vision this guy's coming. So he crosses the street as well. He goes past us to her next door neighbor, who I did know, and that was Mr. Abrams. But he was like in his, I don't know, late 80s. He was pretty well deaf, couldn't hear you. I wasn't going to knock on his door. Plus, he had a whole line of evergreens from his front door out. And then I didn't want to get caught up in that anyway. So, and then he had a gas lamp, like a gas lamp right by the evergreens. So I'm pounding on her door, and this guy walks past us, and he's hiding amongst those evergreens. And the gas light is illuminating the ground, and I can see his feet. He had blue Nike tennis shoes on, and I can see his tennis shoes. So I thought, oh shit, he's waiting to see if we're going to get in or not. And she's not at home, and I knew she wasn't at home. I was just trying to divert his attention, make him go. So I told my son, I said, listen, pointing, I'm like, that's the Mickey Mouse man. He's like, huh? So he looks down, his eyes got big as saucers. He knew who he was. He had known that, he had heard about the story and everything. So on that T Street, there was a neighbor that lived just right on the other side of my house. Her name was Jean, and she had kids, and he would play with her kids. So I said, go to Jean's house. Run as fast as you can and give me your basket. So he hands me his basket, and he's going down her few little steps. Her house was flat, mine was up on a hill. Anyway, so he starts running, and I've got his basket, and I'm going down the steps, and the guy, I guess, could see us, and he was looking through the trees. So he steps out from behind the trees, and he begins running after us. And Kevin is screaming, Jane! And I'm screaming too, Jane! We're screaming at the top of our lungs and just hollering, you know, ah! So she opens her doors, you start to see other porch lights and everything. And he's right on my ass. So still didn't even drop the basket. I don't know what I was thinking. But the only thing I could think, and Kevin is right in front of me, so the only thing I can think to do is like to, you know, so I instinctively just turn around and lunge at him, and he stops and does that and turns around and runs the other way. By then, Jean had her door open. Other people had opened up their doors, and she called the police. Other people called the police. Apparently, he had been walking around the neighborhood before I got home, and he was doing some property damage. There were some gay men that lived at the end of that T, and he had knocked out a portion of their stockade fence. He had done some other things, broken some windows, and the guy was just unhinged. But in any case, that was absolutely terrifying. And that was the story of the Mickey Mouse Man. And then later on, it was just a couple of weeks later, they caught him. And the whole story came out about who he was. They, you know, this is pre-internet. So they knew that somebody had killed their kid and their wife in a fire. And they also knew there was somebody else doing this other stuff, you know, hanging around these kids at school. And he was in another suburb, it was Normandy or Wellston, I can't remember. And they weren't able to, you know, put the puzzle pieces together until afterwards. And then to know that, it was horrifying. But yeah, that's something we never forgot. But I have some other creepy stories too, and I've got to tell you the one about the deadbolt. So that's coming next. All right, take care. Stay safe.